part 2 of our chapter 6. This is our chapter on ethics and that navigating ethical situations in organizations and in life for our human relations course. And so what we're going to look at for this video is we will be able to explain how our ethics, how your ethics are developed, both personally and in the workplace. So the topic is explaining how your ethics are developed both personally and in the workplace, meaning where do our ethics come from? What are the sources of personal as well as organizational ethics? So we will start with the personal ethics. We are not born with our values. We've talked about that before. Values are some things that we get with us as we age. And values are very tied to ethics because ethics are literally what we are valuing and what is right from wrong. And so this slide here lists several different sources of ethics. The first one being religion. Religion influences what is considered right and wrong for many people on this globe. Number 2 is culture, right? The culture we grew up in, which is not necessarily the same as country, because one country might have multiple different cultures in it. So every culture has a societal set of values, and it tells us what is good, what is right, what is moral. Media, social media, traditional legacy media, advertising shows us what our values should be. And we do know now that media can also be very harmful to us. So they might be portraying values that are not good for us. Models is our 4th source of personal ethics. Parents, siblings, mentors, coaches, friends, they all affect our ethics. The way we see them act, behave, and the things that they say, how they communicate affect us, they impact us. And we model that. And if we see people that are important to us say and do certain things, we think those are the right things to do. Attitudes as well. Our attitudes, like our values, tend to develop at a pretty young age. So our impressions and our likes and dislikes impact our ethics as well. So for instance, if you are someone who spends a lot of time outdoors, you might feel a connection to the environment. And that might cause you to buy more environmentally friendly products, recycle more, reduce, etc. Then we have experiences. Certainly, values can change over time depending on our experiences. For instance, if we have a traumatic experience like being bullied by our boss or a peer, our opinion of the right thing to do and the right way to treat people could change once we become managers in a similar situation. Lastly, our personality impacts and affects our values. Considering our own values, such as work ethic, the work ethic that we have, it could perhaps be affected by the way we grew up, which is partly our values. Partly our personality. So why are we studying ethics in a human relations course? Well, certainly, companies tend to have codes of ethics and policies internal to the organization. But even though we have those structural components, behaving ethically is really a key ingredient to having successful relationships with other people. So your behavior, apart from codes of ethics and policies, is really what matters. It's how we interact with other people, right? And as we have talked about so far in this course, emotionally intelligent is a key component for being successful in our careers. And aspects of emotional intelligence, such as self-management, social awareness, empathy, they all relate to ethics. So if we lack social awareness and empathy when it comes to ethics, this can be disastrous. And this slide lists an example from the 2010 oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico that was traumatic. And former CEO at that time, Tony Hayward, said, "Oh, goodness, this has been so rough. I really would like my life back." And he was later observed watching yacht races, completely showing that he was lacking social awareness. He did not understand that the thousands of gallons of oil being spilled, leaked into the Gulf of Mexico, affecting people, thousands of people, animals, businesses, all who live there. And he couldn't be bothered dealing with this. He did apologize later, but the damage had already been done. And this could be taken as a sign of lack of ethics. So, learning how to make ethical decisions makes us more trustworthy, honest, and caring about how our decisions and choices impact other people. And also, when we make ethical decisions, we are viewed as ethical people, right? And our careers can begin to grow, and so can our relationship with other people. So, what are some sources of company ethics? Companies tend to have value statements. A value statement is the guiding principles of the organization. These are the things that the company finds to be important. They tend to hold the company values, which of course, as we know from the last video, are tied to company ethics. And these tend to be published in what's called a code of conduct or a code of ethics. So the code of conduct then is a guideline for dealing with ethics in an organization. For instance, we might have a sexual harassment policy, employee privacy policy, policy on workplace violence, all those things that tells us the ideal conduct in our organization. Then we might have some people in our organization called whistleblowers. Whistleblowers are those who inform two other parties about ethical or illegal violations. And they notify people outside of our organization when things are not being done correctly, when they're being done ethically, unethically, or illegally in our organization. This slide lists a handful of situations that could be considered ethical choices. And so this is just for you to take a look at. You might want to pause the video for a moment and take a look here and say, which ones of these have you faced lately and what did you do? Things such as taking home office supplies, plagiarizing, breaking somebody's trust, discriminating against people, taking care of your personal business and company or class time, etc., etc. So potentially ethical or unethical choices in these situations. Which ones did you do and how did you think about it? All right. So what's in it for us, right? Recognizing ethical situation is a super important skill that is valued by organizations everywhere. So for instance, consider this. During the COVID-19 pandemic, people are working from home unless you are in an occupation that's called essential and you have to go to work or you are going into work. And so you have a 40-hour normal work week, and last week you clocked 23 hours and you still get all the work done. How many hours would you report to your boss, assuming that you're reporting your hours to your boss? Would you report to 23? Would you report to 40? Right? Recognizing that this is an ethical situation and then consulting these ethical decision-making tools and processes that exist can help us. They can help us make the right decision on what to do in these situations. And later parts of this chapter will give us several of those decision-making tools for ethics. Here's a couple of exercises if you want to grow your ethics skills. Provide an example of each level of ethical issues that we discussed and describe. Those were in the part 1 where we discussed the 4 levels of ethical issues. Create a personal value statement. This should include 5 to 10 things that you find important. Now assess your close relationships. Do you think they are matching? What can occur when your personal values do not match the values of other people around you? How does that really impact you? Also, you can go online and find a code of conduct and write 3 paragraphs on some of the main areas of focus. What do companies put out there? In summary, there are sources of personal and company ethics. Our personal sources of ethics come from things such as the models we had in our childhood, parents, from our experiences, religions, or culture. Companies use value statements and codes of ethics or codes of conduct to ensure that everyone is following the same ethical codes, since ethics, of course, vary from person to person. So that means that our behavior is really what is important in this situation. That's going to be a wrap. So I will see you next time. Thanks.